Today we're firing up the Octane instead of the O2, and we're going to take a look at Houdini. Hello everybody, and welcome to Old Irix Software Tutorials Series 3. Today we're doing Houdini. I'm going to show you how I'm launching Houdini. I'm not sure how everybody else does. The Houdini copy that I have, I got it running 2 years ago. I didn't have an install. It came with an O2 I bought in 2009, and I couldn't get it to run on there. And I waited years later to try it again here on the... I made a copy of the folder. It was in opt HFS 5.5. I placed it here, and then eventually did enough digging and found out that it needs to have a setup run so that you can have environment variables that will work. And so I go into the terminal here, we go change directory, opt hf tab, enter, and then you type source HOD, I press tab to get Houdini _s tab, so I get that source Houdini setup, hit enter. It sets the environment variable, then you have to run the license server, SESINET, so SESINET D, I think is it. Yeah, okay, so that runs that, and then you can type Houdini, and it should let me run it. Ta-da! Version 5.5. Okay, where do we start? Oh man, this still looks atrocious in this camera view here. This looks way too bright. There we go. That's a little better. Let's see if I can get this to lock here. There we go. Alright, so some bad exposure there. It happened in a video earlier. Alright, let's see if we can get this going here. So I'll do the navigation first. First thing you want to do is go down here to the middle of the left panes of 3D view, and over here on the right you have like this is kind of like an outliner. If you did my Maya tutorial, this little section here is a little outliner, but it's a nodal view, so you have all these items that come in a default scene. We'll get rid of those. Select them all and hit delete. We don't need them. And we have our 3D view over here, and I'll go down here to the lower right. It says click visibility, and that turns on this grid. And when you start in Houdini, you're gonna have this 3D view is gonna be flat on the plane. If you left click and drag, you'll pull yourself up here, and you can start looking around. You see like, okay, I'm in a 3D world here. When you're in certain selection modes in Houdini, you don't need to press another keyboard item. You can just use the left, middle to dolly, left to orbit, rotate, and then right to pan. That's pretty straightforward. And then what we need to do is that generic thing here for getting around the 3D view. You'll use those combinations to get around this nodal view too. This in here is like an outliner in Maya, like I was saying earlier, and this up here is like your attribute editor when you have items selected. When you first open up Houdini, you won't have that little thing here. It's a little hidden bar for display options. You can click that, it'll come open, and we'll use this later in the tutorial. So when you start, it's pretty simple, seems pretty simple. You got a little play line here, 3D view, attribute, and outline setup. And there's this little menu here that shows Houdini. It shows the viewer where they are in Houdini. It's like objects is like the top level, and then the next level down is geometry, and then you have like particles, shaders, and some other things we'll get into. But at the top level, it's like you're in the transform. If you did my Maya tutorial, it's like the top level item are like item selection and transforms. And then the next level down is like the shape nodes in Maya. It's like you're diving into an object. So let's create some objects here first. So over here on the lower right, I'm going to hit the tab, and I'm going to go to generators, and we'll hit this little geometry here and just click it, and it drops this thing here. And this is a generic file node locator. You know, it's this XYZ cube and that's down in here in this guy here. Let me zoom in here, like left click to drag that view around, and then middle mouse drag to kind of zoom in and out. And I'm going to rename this grid, G-R-I-D, or we can call it floor actually. I'll just floor. Hit enter, and then when you have it selected, just hit the enter key and you'll dive down into it. And you can see here's the file node. Now if you want to see that again, instead of hitting the enter key, you can go here and you can see we're in the second layer. You can go back to the top and then we're out of the floor. And that's all that's happening. Just a quick way to get into it. You can either switch here with geometry to go from objects to surface operators. That's what that SOP is. And this is like the shape nodes in Maya when you dive in. So you can right click and say edit SOPs. So you can edit SOPs, hit enter, or select here. All three ways of getting from the transform. As you can see, that this is a transform because when you have it selected, here's your translate, rotate, and scale in the world, and there's some other shading and rendering options you get here. It's like an attribute editor. And we'll click this and we'll hit enter and we'll go inside. And now in here we just have this file thing, and I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to hit tab, and we have another group of you see this is a different menu than the one at the top level. It's kind of context sensitive. So now that we're in the surface operators, you have a different group of nodes you can find. And we're going to go to the primitives and we're going to grab a grid. That was a font. Oh yeah, here's a grid. Okay, so here's the little guy. You can see it in the window now. And I'm going to go down here to this guy next to the grid visibility. I'm going to go down here to display geometry smooth shade. I'm going to right click it. Looks like a little cylinder. I'm going to do smooth wire shaded. Now you can see that the different how many spans we have here. So it's reflected up here. And we're going to go do the size. I'm going to do this at like 20 by 20. And we'll leave all that alone. And we want this to be, we'll leave that as a polygon. And we're not messing with this yet. We'll get another one later. So we go back out to objects, and that's our floor. And let's go middle mouse drag ourselves back out here, or if we do spacebar G, it'll bring us home. That'll put us out like on the object. H should do the same thing, but so if I hit S, it'll let me select an object, and right click will let me mess with the gimbal once I've had that. So I'll get out of there. I'm gonna hit the S key. Okay, so we're out here. All right, so I need to create a couple more objects here. We'll do some basic lighting like I usually do in my other tutorials, and then I'll get into copy SOPs and particles in a little bit. So we have floor. I'll click off it, hit tab again. The recent used nodes show up at the bottom, so I can just hit another geometry node, hit enter to go inside. Delete that file node. It's pretty standard, and then I'm going to get another primitive, and we'll grab a box. We'll drop that down here. This is a little different because we want to do stuff. We want to do stuff to this box instead of just drop it in. So you could move it up here. You can see that you can change the center, but we don't want to do that. I want to move it on the floor at the transform level. So we go out of the geometry SOP and go after the object, and we're going to go spacebar H or spacebar G. Yeah, spacebar G. It's like using the focus in Maya, and we can get in here. And let's move it here using the transform in the world. So we're gonna. This is a neat feature in Houdini when you float over one of the numeric boxes and you hold down like the middle mouse click, you get this numeric thing. And if you can go up and down it, and you can see increments of 10, 1, 0.1, 0.01, and 0.001. And so I'm going to move up by 0.1, and you can see if I drag left or right how that changes that. And right now I'm on the scale. I want the transform, so I'm going to go up here. On this, I'm going to go up, I'm going to use the 0.1. I'm going to move this up till it's on the floor. Let's see here. If you need finer control, you just change it down to another one, and you can see it's more smooth. It's just a granular control. So here we are, putting that up on the floor. Now I'm going to rename this cube. Hit enter. And then I'm going to hit enter to dive into it. Now here's our box. Now I want to modify this as kind of showing you how Houdini's node process works here. So we want to smooth this thing out or subdivide it. So let's do tab, and under polygon we have subdivide, and we'll hit enter, or like once it's clicked, we'll click down, and then I'm going to take the bottom of the output of the box, and you don't know if you can see it because of the contrast of the monitor. There's a little connector coming out, and I'm going to connect it to the left top of this thing, and now that's feeding data to that, but we don't see anything happen because this little blue flag determines how much where the processing is in Houdini. So right now it's just saying process the box, but if we want to go down here and process the subdivision, you take the blue flag and you put it here, and you see there it is. And so let's see here. So that's subdivided. Put it at 2. Override crease value. Let's see here. So now I can do this to it. Alright, so this gives us some nice smoothness, but we don't, I want more spans here. So let's go back to the box and let's look at the box options here. And what we're going to do is let's look at divisions. So I'm going to give it a polygon. Let's do a mesh. Okay, here we go. Now it's more 3 spans across. And let's see if we can turn this subdivision back on. No, it doesn't work that way because it definitely needs, the box needs to be polygon. So let's get back up here. Polygon mesh, there we go. So it's a polygon mesh. Now we can go down here. Now that's got 3 spans. Here, right? Consolidate corner points. That's interesting that they do that. Alright, now let's go down to our subdivide and see if we can turn it on. There we go. And now we can give it the different depth here. So I'm using the subdivide attributes now when we're up here. So there's our original. I'm going to divide it once. Move it till it goes 1. So that's pretty good. And there's even over here, we'll go 2. See how far it goes here. That's pretty serious. And then I can, that's what it normally divides into, but we can override the crease weight to kind of like decide for Houdini how far we want it to smooth in. It's letting us do that. A little bit of history. And then let's see if I can look at the round, like the smooth node here. I'll hit tab, hit S. It gives us limits what's there. Let's see what the smooth node does to this. Let's see if I do this here. Could be that I should have put the smooth node before it. So I click this on. Yeah, it's not really making much of a difference. It's trying to. It's kind of bowing it in and out. I don't know if you can see it kind of bowing in and out there, but yeah. The better thing to be doing would be to, let's turn this box back on. Let's see if I can move this before that. So we'll take this output into smooth, turn on the smooth flag, and you can see now a much bigger impact that it has. See if I can do 1 cutoff for, oh no, it's on 0. And we'll just, yeah, it's got this kind of roundness to it. And then we'll take this out here and we'll put the subdivide below the smooth. Connect them and put the flag here. And so now you can see, even with the subdivision, like I can crease these weights and everything, it's being affected by the smooth. This is one of the ways that Houdini is really efficient and elegant with data. So now I have both the subdividing creating a certain kind of shape, and I can have the smooth mess with that too. This is a really neat process of being able to control your geometry in Houdini and swap the nodes around and try different things. Okay, so that's our cube. Kind of a neat roundy cube there. I'll leave that alone, and then we'll subdivide. We'll let the at render time, we'll subdivide that too to see how that looks. It's kind of fun. Maybe I won't smooth it that much. Let's try to smooth it back a little bit here, yeah. Give us a little roundness, but not too much. Okay, so let's go back up to the top level here, geometry objects, and let's create a sphere, of course. Gotta have a sphere. Hit enter to dive in, delete the file node, hit tab, primitive sphere, and we have a mesh, or NURBS, let's do a NURBS, yeah, and then I'll go back up to the top level here, and we can just scale this down a little bit. Instead of grabbing one of the axes, you can also grab these over here, so I'll grab the whole thing and we'll just scale it back a smidgen, and then we will move it up here to the side. Hit the T, hit the S, and then I just right click and hit the T, and then we have this, move the sphere. I'll hit the move is T, rotate is R, and scale is E. So we can do these things here and hit T. And it's tricky because Houdini, once you turn on this mode where you're moving the geometry with the gimbal, you can no longer just move the mouse with just clicking the mouse. You have to hold the space bar then. So that's a little, Houdini's got like 2 different modes like that you move the navigation with depending on if you're selecting the objects or not. So you see I have that selected now, I can't get out of it, and then I have to hit Q. Yeah, I hit Q to get out of it, and then I can right click to get back into the move mode. So see, I can't click off that object until I hit Q again, and then I'm basically selecting here with this arrow, and then I can right click and then get the gimbal. So hit Q again, hit the left click the sphere, hit the right click, and then I've got the TRE gimbal comes up, just so you know how to get around with that. Okay, so let's see, we've got the grid, the cube, the sphere. Sphere, and then we want to do let's see, we've got to do a torus. Let's do geometry. We'll make a torus here, dive in, enter, hit tab, primitive torus, drop that in there. I can switch the blue flag to that even though it had the file. Delete that. Let's scale this down a smidge. Turn the radius up a little bit like this. Let's see. And hit Q. Let's see, S. Grab that guy. Oh, I'm grabbing the faces now. Interesting. I'm not sure how I got there. The W turns off the wireframe mode. Let's see if I can. Okay. Oh, because I'm in component mode, that's why. Yeah, it's basically allowing me to select the components because I'm at the surface operator level. Now that I've got the setting that I want to move it, I got to go back to geometry here, the top level. Okay, so that allows you to select the, it's like the shape node. Like, so when you're out here at object level, that's the transform in Maya, and when you jump down into geometry, it's like you're messing with the shape node, and that's why you can select the individual components and start messing with them in here, like as if you're modeling the shape node. Alright, let's go back into the top, call this Taurus, and oh yeah, I did want this to be NURBS though, so let's go NURBS, and then come back out, and now I have that, right click, hit the T, and we'll move this over here. Hit the space bar to zoom us out a little bit here. I'll pull you up. And hit the R to rotate. Get you over here. Scale you down a smidge. And should be good. Let's see. See how close we are to the sphere. Okay, kind of in the same spot here. Alright. Zoom out. Let's get you on the floor here. Alright, let's get some shaders on these guys. Let's see, hit Q so I can get this guy. And then right click on R so I can turn him a little bit. Q to grab this guy. Right click. Hit T. Kind of placed in the middle here. Alright, so that's pretty good basic setup for us to do some lighting on here. Alright, the next thing we do is we've got to make shaders to put on these characters. These two, because their NURBS, are going to render really smooth, and this one is going to be pure polygon, so we have to make this render subdivision at render time, which I'll show you after we're done with shading. So to get to the shading, we go from the objects here. You can do it here, you can do it up here. We'll go from the objects down to the shaders, and it brings up this different interface here. It shows you it's kind of like an interface for developing shaders. And what I usually do is I use these basic one Uber shader. It's like a thing called the super shader. So I'll hit tab. There's a thing called Vex Standard, and there's one in here called the super material, and this is the one I use. It has all the components that I need. So the main ones that I'm going to use anyway are all in one shader here, so I just use the super material a lot. And we'll create a V, we'll do a shiny underscore green, and we'll do a green, it's not too bright. And we'll take the specular down by 0 tab, 0 tab, 0 tab, and we'll put the reflection up at like 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. And at least turn that for shiny green. Alright, so I'd like to copy this. I don't think I can. Let's see. Let's see if I do SPACEBAR T, I can move to the other view, but I don't know if I can copy in here too. Can I? Control D, Control C, Control V? Yeah, okay. So now I've copied that. So that's pretty cool. Now I can take this and I can just go shiny blue. And with the shiny blue, I can just pick, close, I can just pick the blue color and turn it down a little bit. It already has the reflection and everything set up, so I have to reset those. And same thing here, I'll Control C, click over, Control V to another shader, and I will change this one to shiny red. And we'll change its color to red, so that helps us get there a little bit faster. Yeah, close. And we want one for the floor, so I'm going to Control C, Control V. Just call this whole thing floor, only we are going to make this gray. And we don't want the floor reflective, so I'm going to turn these all off so it's not shiny or reflective. So we have 4 shaders we've made here. I'm going to hit SPACEBAR T, and you can see them in the list now. And I'll go back out of the shaders, back to the objects. And in order to put these guys on the objects, we select the object, and we can go up here to shading on the shading tab in the attribute editor here, or whatever this is called in Houdini. It reminds me of the attribute editor in Maya. If we go down here on shading tab, there's this thing called shop, which is shader operator surface, and we go over here to the far right, and there's an arrow. If you click that, it'll show you the list of shaders that exist. And for this cube, I think we'll make it blue, and you can see it turn blue. Click over here on the sphere, same thing, go to shading, shader operator surface, shiny green, click on the Taurus, shading, go under here, click on this, shiny red. Okay, click on the floor, shading, shader operator surface, floor. Alright, so now that's got all that in place. And we have our items. And now we have to make a camera and a light. And there's a shader we have to make for the light to get a soft shadow, because this is before area lights. The Houdini 6 or 6.5 added area lights, and so we have to get that in place here. So let me start building that. We'll do hit tab, generators, and make a camera. And what we'll do here, turn that camera on, and here it is. And I'm going to go down here to the bottom. It says no camera, go to cam 1. And we're inside now. If I move the camera now, it's going to leave the camera where it is. It's just going to move my kind of scene view camera. So if you want to, once you turn this camera on, if you want to move it and be that this is the camera you're moving, you have to press this on the to the right. It says lock camera to view. And so now when I move around, this is actually going to move the camera, and it's a little disorienting because it kind of pulls the camera model behind it, so it's a little weird at first, but eventually it's not. You get used to it. It's not a big a deal. Okay, so there's this, and we need to do light. So I'll hit tab, generators. I'll hit light. And drop that in there. Now you see this is a pretty neat thing. It drops the light in and everything goes dark because the OpenGL in Houdini is pretty cool. I'm going to turn off the grid since we have this view, and we're going to move the light. If I right click, is this light? Yeah. So do this, move the light back, and hit R, and we'll rotate this character up. And I'm going to leave our camera where it is, but I'm going to go to no camera so that I can navigate around without moving where our camera was here. And if I get far enough back, you'll actually see there's a little camera there. So I'm doing this. I'll hit the W to turn off and on the wireframe. Get far enough back here, pull this back, and take a look at what we're doing with the light. And we want something to reflect, like a light card, because this, just like a lot of the early programs, they didn't have a physical representation of the light. So you'd light something diffuse and it wouldn't have a reflection in the reflection, and it would just be not photoreal. And if you have something that is the light in the reflection creating the highlight, it feels a little bit more tangible and touchable. So let's create tab geometry, and I'm going to create, this one will be called light card. And we will hit enter to dive into it. Delete this guy, hit tab. We're just going to do another grid, drop that in here. Go back out of the surface operator to the object, and let's see if I can hit T now. I gotta right click, yeah. Bring this up right where the light is, hopefully. See space bar around this near the light. So it looks like it is the light when we get to it. Hit R, and hit E, and we'll scale this up a bit so it's nice and big card for reflection. Hit T and pull it back so it's not blocking the light. And what we need for that is a shader that it builds the shadow. So we go down here, I'm going to hit tab, Vex standard, and there's a thing called, should be a thing for blur shadow. Yeah, there it is, blur shadow. Turn that on. We'll turn the shadow bias down to 2. We'll see if I can make this. Can I make the softness 3, or is it? Oh yeah, it does go to 3. Okay, maybe like 2.5. See if that'll give us something. That kind of sets the size, and I'm thinking the radius maybe a 3. We'll see if I can, how it looks. Go back out of shaders to objects. Oh, we also need a constant. Excuse me. Go back to the shaders. We're gonna hit tab. We need to Vex standard 1 constant, because that's going to be just pure white that we can put on that card. Objects, select that card. Oops, Control Z. Got that card. Hit shading, shader operator surface, constant. There we go. All right, now let's do a little preview. Let's do a little preview of this thing here. Hit save as. A little up. Let's go to the my user folder here, user, up, people, hopefully he's down here, Casey, got some other Houdini scenes in here. We'll call this basic 1A, accept. Okay, so we've got that saved. All right, let's look at our render. We'll go to the camera, cam 1, and see how this turns out. Go down here to the right. There's this little thing for rendering here on the lower left of the main window here. If you right click, you've got RenderMan, Mantra, Fast Mantra, Mantra selected. I'm just going to use this. We don't have RenderMan here. There are RenderMan shaders that come with this, but I don't have RenderMan hooked up to it. So I'm going to just hit this Mantra, and it should spit me out a decently quick image. And what do we have? Oh, well, we have the nice reflection here. Let me open this up here, and we can zoom in to this. I can actually zoom in, and we can see we have the nice reflection. There's no shadow because I probably didn't turn it on with the light, so I have to go check the light stats. So if I go in here, hit enter to dive in. Oh no, we don't have to dive into the light, excuse me. Go here to shading. I didn't put the shadow. There's that. We put the shadow operator, didn't plug it in, so shadow operator, blur shadow. There we go. And then, see, that should cover our shadow draw. Let's see if that worked. I'll try that again right here. Right click, Mantra 1. See if that brings it up. All right, it's gonna be a little slower, so yeah, I'll start. All right, it finish the render. Wasn't too long. Got a nice soft shadow in there. We're going to put an ambient light. This is perfectly black, so it's like there's no bounce light, little CG. So I'm going to put an ambient light in there to round that out. And let's see, quit, or file quit, not scenes quit. I'll pull these out a little bit here. I'll right click, pull that guy out a little bit. Q, click, right click, and pull him and separate him a little bit. Alright, so we want ambient light, we'll hit tab over here, go to generators. There's our special, instead of just using a regular light, you can just hit the ambient light, drop it in there, and we'll turn the value down to 0.030. It should give us just a nice fall off here. And we'll do this down here. We'll do another quick mantra. Okay. There's the render. Let's zoom in a little bit and we'll make a big render and then we'll move on to, oops, where'd you go, thing? Here it is. Oh. Alright, I'll just stop that. Alright, we'll just make a big render because it was looking good, so I'm not going to let it run again. In order to figure out that, we need to go to the camera. And well, let's make an output here. Let's go to the objects all the way down to the bottom, output. It has mantra here already set up. And when I was going to build one, if you need to build one, you could delete this and just add, you know, any one of these renders. You got mental ray, renderman, mantra. There's already a mantra set up, so I don't need to do it. And the sampling is pretty good, so I don't really need to. I suppose I could raise it a little bit, but let's just keep that and kind of get the point. Okay, so that's already ready for output. And we just have to change our resolution. So we go to the camera. And under view, there's our resolution. So let's put this at like 1280 by 720. It gives us our draw window here. And we will render that. I'll save. And then we'll do copy sops and rain after that. So let's see. Render mantra. Should draw a big frame here. Here we go. All right, I'll pause it. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Like this, got a good ambient light level. Nice things going on here. Okay, first thing to notice is, I don't know if you can see it. These are smooth because they're NURB surfaces, so they're perfectly smooth. But I forgot to change the polygon one that we smoothed and subdivided to subdivision at render time, so it would smooth it up more. And so I'll just show you that. We'll quit this here. Select this guy over here at shading and render tab. We go down here and it says geometry, you know, it's like render geometry as is, and you'll click this guy here and you'll go polygons as subdivision surfaces, and that will make it so that when it renders, it'll smooth that out a little bit more and make it so it's perfectly round instead of, if you had seen the render really close, you could see that there was some stuff going on that wasn't perfectly smooth. So that's how you would do that. Alright, so let's save this. Let's do a couple more things that are more Houdini-esque than just a Maya, something you'd set up in Maya here. Let's do, let's turn off the cube and the sphere. And we'll take the Taurus and I will, let's move it over here. Let's go back to the transform here and we'll kind of flatten it back out a little bit here and leave that there. Also, let's dive into the Taurus and make it a polygon, and let's turn it down a lot. So I'm going to turn it down to like 5-sided, 6-sided, so it's really basic because I'm going to use the copy sop now. This is a pretty neat feature here. I'm going to leave the camera, go to no camera so we can zoom around it here, and you see some neat things here. So what we're going to do is we're going to clone this thing with the copy sop. So I'm going to have the thing, I hit tab, and we'll hit C to see what's there, and what is under C, and here's the copy sop. So I'll put this under here, we'll connect this guy to this guy, and we're down here, and we'll turn that on, but nothing's happening because we only have one copy. And I'm going to turn it up to like 10. Let's go 10. And what'll happen is you'll see them show up. There's a kind of, you can see them overlapping a little bit here. They got darker. We'll go on the Z. We'll go on the Z. Middle mouse click over here. I'll start dragging, and you'll see that, yeah, they'll start coming apart. Here, this is pretty neat. And now the other thing to do is let's rotate on the X. Let's try hero drag. You see these guys start to rotate, like not quite uniformly. They're slightly offset here, the way its defaults is. And scale, rotate, trans. See, we got the stamp here. These are some attributes you can add to each one here. So it's doing this transform cumulative, you know, the way it's working here. Let's see here, if we change, let's rotate. Let's go back to the top here. I'm going to take the Taurus itself, and I'm going to rotate it on the X a little bit. And you can see that that's now rotating the whole thing because of that pivot point. So it's kind of like that one, the front one still maintains its pivot point there, so you can kind of see what's going on here. Let's go back in here, and let's rotate on this one here. See, this is pretty neat. You got this neat kind of setup here. All right, so you got the uniform scale. You can play with this uniform scale, some kind of fun stuff to mess with. Let's now, now we've got this. I'm playing with some concepts here. Let's copy that. So now we have this one row, and spacebar over here. And what I want to do is I want to copy the copy SOP. So I'll hit tab, and down here at the bottom is last one used. Click this guy over to here, and we'll hit this. And now we'll make copies of that. We'll make 3, and let's translate on the X this way. And now we have this pretty cool process happening here. So let's see here. And we've got a lot of stuff happening now. If we go back to the earlier one, now you can see that translates to the rest of them. So now it's trying to copy the whole thing. Is doing this whole work. This is really where Houdini starts to become really fun when you're messing with it. You know, you can come up with all kinds of neat ideas just playing around with some of its little tools. And this is an old version of Houdini too. Alright, so let's switch this back. Let's go back to, I kind of want to take that off the grid. Let's see if we go objects. And what I'm going to do is on the Taurus, I want to, oh yeah, I want to rotate. I know what I do is keep the main Taurus where it is, but I'm going to rotate. How we do this here, we want to, I don't want to move that. X, yeah, X or Z. Yeah, there we go. So they're not overlapping so much. There we go. Somewhere they're not crossed over. And then in here, what I'm going to do also is I'm going to transform it inside. So I'm going to right click on this guy, and we're going to do hit T, use a transform, and put it into the middle. And this will allow me to change it before it gets to the copy SOP, but not change it where it is in the world space. So I can rotate it here and play with it this way, because I want to do some adjustments here as well. You can see this is pretty fun. Let's turn it this way. There we go. That's what I want to kind of get to lie down against each other there. Okay, so now we've got that, and now I turned it low quality so that we could see the interactivity of it, like when we move parts of it here, how quickly. Because if I kept the quality high, it becomes a little slower. So now I'm going to go back to Taurus here. I'm going to put this back to NURBS, and it takes a minute. It's drawing these up really quick, but you know, now it's a little bit slower. You can see here as I'm trying to move around. This isn't quite moving as fast. So maybe what I'll do is I'll take it back to the polygon so we're quick, and we'll center it where we want it to be. Go back to the camera, and let's lock the camera because I want to see it from over here now. And yeah, I'll get down here, and then I'm going to move this whole Taurus on X. There we go. Something like this, and then I'll try to get this in the frame here. And let's go back to the other copy SOP here. Maybe I want to lay those other ones down. Let's see. Not that one, this one. Yeah, like something like that. Or what else can we do here to make them do weird? Yeah, just some neat things here. All right. I kind of like the way it was folding up there. I guess I'll go back to that. Yeah, it's kind of cool. All right, so let's go back up to the top. You'll see I get everything back. Oh yeah, but we want to make it NURBS again now that we've got it spaced where we want. Polygon mesh. I suppose I could leave it that way because it'll subdivide it at render time instead of using NURBS, but I'll just put it back on NURBS so we can see what it looks like. All right, let's jump back out here, and we've got the red shader on everything. Yeah, all right, save that, and I'll do a render, and we'll come back and look at it in a moment. Okay, here's our image. Let's see, pretty cool. I think I'm gonna do one more image here. This is a pretty neat looking render from Houdini's mantra using that copy SOP. I'm gonna do one more at a different angle, and then we'll go on to doing particles here. All right, it finished up. It's looking pretty snazzy. Pretty beautiful little thing just from playing around with the copy SOP. And let's see, close that guy out. Oh, whoops, there's the file one. And we'll save this, and then I can show you. Let's see, let's try one more thing here. We'll do one more thing with particles here. So let's get rid of the Taurus, turn that off. Let's see, turn that off. Okay, there we go. And let's see, we got our ambient light here. We have to have that visible. It's doing its thing. All right, let's try to put some particles in here. Let's go lights, our camera over here. We've got all our items over here, and let's see if we can make it geometry. We'll call this snow. And let's hit enter to go in here. Let's get rid of the little guy. Let's see, we gotta have something to emit from for the particles. So let's see, a polygon or primitive grid. I guess we'll have it just come out of the grid. And we'll move this up. See on this here. Let's take this off the camera. Do no camera. Move around a little bit here. Let's see if we can make this guy go up more. Let's go like, and size will be like 10 by 10 maybe. Zoom out, yeah. Okay, so there's that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on this little thing here. Like if you don't have this menu open, you click this guy, it brings this. There's this thing right here which turns on the points, so you can see these little blue dots. If you can see them, no matter how far I zoom in, they always stay the same size. But that'll allow us to see the particles better than the gray shaded that they usually are. Okay, so we have this grid, and what we want to do is go to particle, particle here, and we'll connect it up with this guy. And let's see, if I turn the particle on, you'll see that it's starting to generate something here. If I press play, you see it starts to do something, and it emits from the points. That's how it starts. There's probably a way to get it to emit from the polygon faces. Let's see, reuse systems, forces, particles. I'll add a particle ID and mass, so we can mess with that later. I got render as spheres, lines, tubes, spheres. Okay, I'll leave that there for a minute. And let's stop this and rewind. And what we want to do is we want to give it a force, so downward. So I'll go like -2, and we'll watch it pull the particles down. So now it's starting to go, but they're pretty uniform. They're coming out in rows, and it's dropping them. It's kind of neat, but we should randomize that. So what we want to do is we want to put a randomize like on the sort. So it's tab push S, and we'll use the sorter, and we'll bring this guy down into here. And this is something you just have to read up on with Houdini. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Okay. On the sort, oops, I disconnected it. Connect. Okay, so point sort. I'm going to go here, and we're going to go to this no change. We're going to go to random. And on the seed, I'm just going to use this very common thing. I'm going to do $capital F. Has to be capital for it to work. And now this should randomize it. Let's see if that worked here. Push play. No, it didn't. Hold on a second. Yeah, so messed up. I'm supposed to plug, now I plug the sort into the particles, so it's in the way. There we go. Slight got ahead of myself there. So yeah, and once I made the sort, I had to plug it into the particles. We're still just coming straight from the grid. And now that I have this $F for the seed, you'll see that when you play it, now they're going to come out using random on a frame. So that's pretty cool. And then we can go back to the particle and go forces, and we'll add a little bit of wind, like we'll do a 0.2 on the wind there. And you can see it starts to pull them sideways. And I don't know, let's see if these, it says it draws them as spheres, and I'm wondering how that looks. Let's take a pause here and see what that looks like. They got some sort of little outside here. There's like little trails on them. I wonder if we could render the trails. Let's see. Oops, I'm resizing the window here. Let's see, play. I see some sort of action there. And let's see, does that render? Let's just play with this real quick here and try to render mantra, see if it comes up with something that's little dots. Oh yeah, there they go. They're rendering as little spheres. I'll let that finish and start again. Alright, it's about to wrap up the render here. It's just cutting through the last couple of paths. And that's a pretty good start for Houdini. I may do another one. We'll do some sort of, maybe a part 2, so I can show you some dynamics, maybe particles colliding with things, and how to put items on the particles, like instances or something. We can make a snowflake shape and put it on the snow. Just to cover some other little things about Houdini. But I think this is a pretty good in a basic tutorial, general overall, and I'll put this together and we'll throw it up there and see if it's fun for anybody.